What's the one thing a parent never wants to hear from their 17-year-old daughter? Mine looked me in the eyes and asked, should I tell my grandparents I'm gay? I told her no, but she did it anyway. I still remember the exact moment she asked me. We were driving home after soccer practice. The sun was setting, the radio was playing quietly, and everything felt normal. Then out of nowhere, Emma looked over at me and said, Dad, can I ask you something? Of course. She took a deep breath. If I told Grandma and Grandpa I'm gay, do you think they'd still love me? The question hit me harder than anything I'd ever heard. Not because she was gay. I had known for months. I loved her exactly the same as I always had. What hurt was hearing how scared she sounded. My parents came from a different generation. They weren't cruel people, but they had opinions that made me nervous. I had spent years avoiding difficult conversations with them. So after a long pause, I answered honestly, I don't know. She stared out the window. Then she asked, should I tell them? I shook my head. Not yet. She nodded and didn't say another word the rest of the drive home. I thought that was the end of it. 3 weeks later, my parents invited us over for Sunday dinner. Everything seemed normal. My mom was cooking. My dad was talking about baseball. Emma barely touched her food. Then she suddenly pushed her plate away. Dad, I'm doing it. Before I could stop her, she stood up. The entire room went silent. I have something to tell everyone. My stomach instantly dropped. My mom looked confused. My dad lowered his fork. Emma's hands were shaking. Then she said it. I'm gay. The silence that followed felt endless. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My father stared at the table. My mother looked down at her lap. Emma's face turned pale. I could literally see her heart breaking. After nearly a minute, my father stood up and walked out of the room. My mother followed him. Emma looked at me with tears forming in her eyes. I knew it, she whispered. My blood started boiling. I got up so fast my chair nearly fell over. I was ready to tell my parents exactly what I thought of them. I walked onto the back porch and found them sitting together. My mother was crying. My father looked like someone had punched him in the chest. Before they could say anything, I exploded. I told them Emma was brave. I told them she deserved better. I told them if they couldn't accept her, they'd never see either of us again. When I finally stopped talking, my father quietly looked up. Then he said something I never expected. Son, that's not why we're upset. I froze. What do you mean? My mother wiped tears from her face. We're upset because she thought she had to be afraid of us. Suddenly I had nothing to say. My father stared out at the yard. Do you know how much it hurts knowing your granddaughter thought your love came with conditions? For the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. The same man who hadn't cried when his own father died was sitting there trying to hold himself together. A few moments later, he stood up and walked back inside. Emma was still sitting at the table. She looked terrified. My father slowly sat beside her. Then he reached over and took her hand. When your father was 17, he got suspended from school. Emma blinked. I groaned immediately. Dad, he ignored me. He thought I'd stop loving him, but he was wrong. Then he squeezed her hand. And you're wrong too. Emma completely broke down. So did my mother. Honestly, so did I. That night changed everything. 8 years later, Emma married the love of her life. My parents were sitting in the front row. My mother spent most of the ceremony crying. My father walked Emma down the aisle himself. And during the reception, he stood up to give a toast. He looked at Emma and smiled. You know, your dad told you not to tell us. The whole room laughed. Then he pointed at me. Good thing you didn't listen. Everyone laughed even harder. But then his voice cracked. Because the day you told us who you really were was the day we learned how much courage you had. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine. And that's when I realized something. Sometimes the people we're most afraid of disappointing are the very people who will love us no matter what. Sometimes fear writes a story that isn't true, and sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is simply tell the truth.